Come January next year, New York City will usher in its most diverse city council, which also boasts a female majority for the first time ever. Having said that, I now have Linda Lee, a member-elect of the council, who's also one of 2 Korean Americans elected to it. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Linda, and congratulations on your win.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me tonight.
Right. Linda, let's start perhaps with a few words on this remarkable event.
Sure. Well, I have to say it hasn't quite hit me just yet. It is definitely historic for many, many reasons. Myself, as well as Julie Won, we are the first Korean Americans ever elected to the city council. And it is such a historic win for many reasons. And for me personally, in my district, I actually am the first woman and person of color to ever win the race in the city council seat.
Right.
So it's a lot, yeah.
It is. Linda, what was the immediate reaction among those around you, including your family, your friends, your co-workers, with regard to your win?
I think everyone was ecstatic, excited. My coworkers maybe were not so happy because that means I'm going to be leaving the organization. But, I think my family has seen me work so extremely hard for this race. Lots of knocking on doors every single day, pretty much since February. And so it has been a long, hard fought journey. There were a lot of great candidates in the race. And so I think it was just this sense of, wow, it's finally here. And, I have to admit, there was even for me a sense of doubt because, as the first woman person of color, there's always that sense of, oh, maybe some people are not ready yet for an Asian American woman to be in the district and to lead. So it's an honor, truly, and a privilege.
Right. So, Linda, like you said, you are the first woman and the first person of color to represent Council District 23 in Eastern Queens. What would you say are the implications of this reality?
Whew. There is a lot of pressure, not in a bad way, but I find it in a good way. I want to represent people well. And I think for the first time, there is a sense of, wow, here is someone who reflects me, right? Like women, I think, who make up the large portion of people who actually vote in the district. I think they were super excited and happy to be able to see a fellow woman win the district seat for once and for the first time. And I think also as a person of color, my district specifically, it's almost 50% Asian American. And so it's actually the second highest concentration of Asian Americans next to the Flushing area, which has the most. And so there's a lot of immigrant groups, there's a lot of Asian groups that are looking to me. And for the first time, they feel like, wow, here's someone who has been through a lot of the struggles and experiences that our families have gone through. And so I think there's excitement because they're, across the city, I think there's different faces, different representation for the first time. So it's exciting.
Right. As you said, America's great diversity, Linda, has not always been reflected in its leadership. And having said that, could you tell us a bit about the pledges that you believe may have resonated with those who voted for you?
Sure. I actually think a lot of the pledges that I noticed, especially when door knocking, we knocked over 30,000 doors across the district in a very short period of time. I myself probably knocked on about 8,000. And what I have found actually across the board, no matter who you talk to, whether you're, from the Black community, the Asian immigrant community, the white community, is that, people in this area of Queens, they really care about just good schools, good education, safe streets, making sure that their neighborhoods are clean. So very basic things that impact quality of life. Property taxes, of course, is a huge issue here in New York City. And so these are all issues that I think no matter which ethnic group or which population you're talking about, these are issues that everyone cares about across the city. And so I think for me, the policies that I was trying to reflect, and discuss were actually very much reflective of the district as well. So, in that sense, I think people were excited, like, oh, hey, here's someone who's younger, who comes into the district with fresh ideas, hopefully. But still, the core of it is still the same.
Right. Linda, you mentioned that you're currently still heading the non-profit organization. I believe it's called the Korean Community Services. Could you tell us a bit about the work of your entity and perhaps any future plans with Korea, with some campaign that you might be having with the country itself here?
Sure. Yes, so I've been at KCS Korean Community Services for the last 12 years. And I have to say that has been the most humbling experience of my life. And it's interesting because a lot of my friends personally would have probably described me as a Twinkie, right? Because I'm very Americanized inside, but at the same time, you know, when this job opportunity came up, I really wanted to give back to the community. I really wanted to, you know, I thought about my grandmother who raised me and my sister because my parents were small business owners. They owned dry cleaners. And, you know, in working at KCS, I learned so much, and I was able to start the first outpatient mental health clinic in New York City and New York State that is run by a Korean nonprofit organization, which is a growing concern, you know, in the U.S. here, not just in the Korean community, but all over. And especially with the after effects of the pandemic. But, you know, we have the only senior services that are in Korean, the only Korean food Meals on Wheels program. And the cook at KCS, who retired recently, was 93 when she retired, and she was at KCS for about 30 years. And so there's a lot of deep roots and history in this organization where the first wave of Korean immigrants who came to New York City noticed that there are no services in Korean language and there's no culturally competent services. And so they really had that mission of providing all sorts of services from youth to seniors, you know, adult literacy classes, you know, ESL classes, you know, workforce job training programs. You know, they really laid such a great foundation. And I felt like, you know, when I came in, I was the only second generation Korean American to actually be working at KCS. And for the last 12 years, I've seen it grow. I've seen the beauty in diversity of the Korean diaspora and intergenerational staff and how amazing that can be, but tough at the same time. But really, it's such an amazing growing experience. And we've been able to grow the organization so much. We now are in 6 locations. We just moved into a larger community center back in 2017. And our budget right now is nearly $9 million in New York City. And so we've really garnered, I think, the trust and support of the community. And during the pandemic, we became a vaccine site.
Right. Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah.
Linda, one final question before you leave us. Could we have a few words, perhaps, on your goals once you're in office starting next year?
Sure. So I think next year, definitely trying to push language access, because what we saw very clearly from the pandemic is that if you don't speak English, if you don't know how to use the computer, you're automatically left out of a lot of the city programs that are available to the community. And we have a lot of hard work to do throughout this recovery process that the city is still going through. And so however we can help small business owners, the immigrant community, you know, senior services is big because, you know, my district has no transit and lots of older adults. And so I think in this recovery stage, as we move out of the pandemic, we're really, really focusing on how do we reflect policies that hit and impact the most marginalized communities in the city. So that's definitely something that we're going to be trying to focus on.
All right, Linda. All right, then our best wishes to you as you embark on your new journey. And thank you very much for making the time to join us live at this very late hour at your end.
Oh, no, thank you so much. It was an honor.